from the higher prices they can tap once their oil reaches the Gulf Coast and it competes at the same prices as other oil supplies on the global market. No protection for workers, no protection on the environment, and I believe higher prices for American businesses and American consumers. I'd urge my colleagues to vote no on the amendment.
The question is on amendment number 1537. Is there a sufficient second? There is. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander. Aye. Ms. Ayotte. Mr. Barrasso.
Could add 70 on this.
Mr. Baucus. Mr. Begich. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Crapo. Mr. DeMint. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Franken. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mrs. Hagan. Mr. Harkin. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Heller. Mr. Hoven. Mrs. Hutchison. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Anaway. Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Johans. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota. Mr. Kerry. Mr. Kirk. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Cole. Mr. Kyle. Ms. Landrieu. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Lee. Mr. Levin. Mr. Lieberman. Mr. Lugar. Mr. Manchin. Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall, Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden.
So she needs to know.
Yeah. Senators voting in the affirmative: Alexander, Ayotte, Barrasso, Baucus, Begich, Blunt, Bozeman, Brown of Massachusetts, Burr, Chambliss, Coates, Coburn, Collins, Corker, Cornyn, Crapo, DeMint, Graham, Hagan, Hatch, Heller, Hoeven, Inhofe, Isaacson, Johans, Landrieu, Lugar, Manchin, McCain, McCaskill, McConnell, Moran, Murkowski, Paul, Portman, Pryor, Risch, Roberts, Rubio, Sessions, Shelby, Tester, Toomey, Vitter, Webb, Wicker. Ms. Snow, aye. Senators voting in the negative: Akaka, Bennett, Bingaman, Blumenthal, Boxer, Cardin, Carper, Coons, Durbin, Feinstein, Franken, Gillibrand, Harkin, Johnson of South Dakota, Kerry, Klobuchar, Leahy, Levin, Lieberman, Menendez, Merkley, Mikulski, Murray, Nelson of Nebraska, Nelson of Florida, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Rockefeller, Sanders, Schumer, Shaheen, Stabenow, Udall of Colorado, Udall of New Mexico, Warner, Whitehouse, Wyden. Mr. Inouye, no. Mr. Cochran, aye. Mr. Brown of Ohio, no. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, aye. Mr. Kyle, aye. Mr. Enzi, aye. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Casey, aye. Mr. Lee, aye. Mr. Cole, no. Mrs. Hutchison, aye. Mr. Conrad, aye. Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Lautenberg, no.
Vote or change their vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 56, the nays are 42. Under the previous order requiring 60 votes for the adoption of this amendment, the amendment is not agreed to. Now,
Mr.
under the previous order, there will be 2 minutes.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
could we have order?
Let's have order in the chamber. Order in the chamber, please. Take your discussions outside.
Mr. President, it's 4:15. We have a matter that I believe will be decided by voice in just a few minutes. This will be the last vote until Tuesday when we finish this bill. I really appreciate everyone's cooperation. I've talked before about how fortunate we are to have the two managers that we have on this bill. There's Boxer and Inhofe. They've done a remarkably good job. We have a locked-in set of amendments now. There's no reason to work into the night. We've had a good week. We'll have a good week next week, and I wish everyone a good break.
Under the previous order, there will be 2 minutes debate equally divided prior to a vote on the motion to have all applicable budget points of order.
Mr. President, can we have
Senate will be in order, please. Take your discussions outside. Take them in the cloakroom. Order in the Senate. Senator from California. She would like for all of you to hear this.
Mr. President, I'd like order because this is a vote. If we don't get this vote, this bill dies today. So I really need to have order. Thank you. Colleagues, we must waive the Budget Act in order to continue working on this bill. And my friend from Tennessee will tell you otherwise. This bill is 100% paid for. The CBO score is actually $5 billion surplus over the next 10 years. How is it paid for? And I could tell you my friend Jim Inhofe made sure it would be paid for, and we agreed on it through the Highway Trust Fund plus the bipartisan work of the Finance Committee. We have filled this trust fund to cover this bill. 2.8 million jobs hang in the balance. All the work we did today hangs in the balance. We need 60 votes, so if you're for the transportation bill, please vote aye so we can continue our work next week. Thank you.
Senator from Tennessee.
Mr. President, let me first say that I am a very strong supporter of a highway bill and of infrastructure. But I also believe that we should have integrity as it relates to this issue of spending. If I could have order.
Please, order in the Senate.
Last August, the world and the country watched as our nation almost came to a halt. And we agreed, in order to raise a debt ceiling, that we would pass the Budget Control Act, which put strict limitations on spending for last year and for this year. We are making a mockery of what happened during that time if we waive this Budget Control Act point of order that I've put in place. Basically, what we have said, and we've had all kind of senators on both sides of the aisle that have focused on the deficit issue in good faith, but we basically are saying we cannot make it 7 months without violating the Budget Control Act, which we put in place to create discipline in this body. I urge a no vote on waiving this motion.
Mr. President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
For 30 seconds.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I've had the rankings of the most conservative member of this body many times, and I've often said there are two areas where I'm a big spender. One is national defense, one is infrastructure. We desperately need this bill. And it's interesting to me that so many of my good friends, and they are friends, including the senator from Tennessee, that they'll vote, as they did back in 2008, for $700 billion for a bailout, and then something like this comes up, and somehow this is an excuse to kill the bill. You can kill the bill, and we can go out and start all over again. I wish, and I think, that the Finance Committee is going to come up with something that's going to allow us to get this done by the time we get into conference. And I would urge my conservative friends particularly to go ahead and vote for a highway bill.
President.
Senator from Tennessee.
Just 30 seconds.
Time has expired. Senator asks for 30 seconds without...
Mr. President, the fact is the amount of money that it would take to not have a budget point of order is so small that we ought to just offset discretionary caps for this year, the amount that we're spending above that for this highway bill. This is ludicrous that we cannot set priorities in a way that calls us to live within the Budget Control Act and break it within 7 months of passing it and break faith with the American people. I yield the floor.
And I would no.
Senator from Oklahoma.
And I would suggest, I'm
Senator's time has
very
expired.
sorry for the, I asked 10 seconds.
The objection?
That we don't have Senator Thune here, who was doing a great job with the Finance Committee. Unfortunately, his mother died and he's not here. And we would be able to sit down and solve this problem and not delay this bill. Right now it's set up so we can have a highway bill. This could kill it, and I hope that you folks will talk to your people at home. You can't do it before this bill, but afterwards I might suggest you do that.
Yeas and nays. Questions been put? Is there a second? Sufficient seconds. Questions on the motion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander. Ms. Ayotte. Mr. Beckidge. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Dement. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand.
Don't you have the slip? Don't they, I thought they have
Mr. Graham. No. Mr. Grassley. Mrs. Hagan.
It was my intention. Thank you.
Mr. Harkin. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Heller. Mr. Hoven. Mrs. Hutchison. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Inouye. Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Joe Hands. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota. Mr. Carey. Mr. Kirk. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Cole. Mr. Kyle. Ms. Landrieu. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Lee. Mr. Levin. Mr. Lieberman. Mr. Lugar. Mr. Manchin. Mr. McCain. Mrs. McCaskill. Mr. McConnell. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Merkley. Ms. Mikulski.
I didn't do that. You can do that.
Mr. Moran. Ms. Murkowski. Mrs. Murray. Mr. Nelson, Nebraska. Mr. Nelson of Florida. Mr. Paul. Mr. Portman. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island. Mr. Reed of Nevada. Mr. Risch. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Schumer. Thank you, sir. Mr. Sessions. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby. Ms. Snow. Ms. Stabenow. Mr. Tester. Mr. Thune. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Udall of Colorado. Mr. Udall of New Mexico. Mr. Vitter. Mr. Warner. Mr. Webb. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Akaka, Alexander, Baucus, Beckidge, Bennett, Bingaman, Blumenthal, Blunt, Bozeman, Boxer, Brown of Massachusetts, Brown of Ohio, Cantwell, Cardin, Carper, Casey, Cochran, Collins, Conrad, Coons, Durbin, Feinstein, Franken, Gillibrand, Hagan, Harkin, Heller, Hutchison, Inhofe, Inouye, Johnson of South Dakota, Kerry, Klobuchar, Cole, Landrieu, Lautenberg, Leahy, Levin, Lieberman, Manchin, McCaskill, Menendez, Merkley, Mikulski, Murray, Nelson, Nebraska, Nelson of Florida, Pryor, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Rockefeller, Sanders, Schumer, Shaheen, Shelby, Stabenow, Tester, Udall of Colorado, Udall of New Mexico, Vitter, Webb, Whitehouse, Wicker, and Wyden. I have you as aye. Senators voting in the negative: Ayotte, Barrasso, Burr, Coates, Coburn, Corker, Cornyn, Crapo, Dement, Enzi, Graham, Grassley, Hatch, Johans, Johnson of Wisconsin, Kyle, Lee, Lugar, McCain, McConnell, Moran, Murkowski, Portman, Risch, Rubio, Sessions, Toomey, and Warner. Mr. Roberts, no. Mr. Hoven, aye. Ms. Snow, aye. Mr. Chambliss, no. Mr. Isaacson, no.
Are there any senators wishing to vote in the affirmative or change their vote? If not, This vote, the yeas are 66, the nays are 31. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn having voted in the affirmative, the motion is agreed to, and the point of order fails.
President.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, on roll call vote number 33, the Wyden Amendment number 817, I mistakenly voted aye. I meant to vote no. It will not change the outcome, and I ask unanimous consent my vote be reflected as a no.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maine.
Mr. President, on roll call vote number 29, I voted aye. It was my intention to vote no. Therefore, I ask unanimous consent that I be permitted to change my vote since it will not affect the outcome. And, Mr. President, let me just explain very briefly that I was told that the amendment had been modified to accommodate concerns that I've raised, and then the amendment was not so modified. So I wanted to put in that explanation to explain why the error was made. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator from Alaska.
Mr. President, on roll call vote number 29, I too voted aye. It was my intention to vote no. I ask unanimous consent that I be permitted to change the vote since it will not affect the outcome. And it is for exactly the same reason that Senator Collins has mentioned. It was our understanding when coming to the floor that the modification had been accepted. It was not accepted.
Without objection.
Mr. President.
Senator from California.
Mr. President, I just briefly wanted to thank my colleagues. Most of them have gone, but I just feel it's important that the record reflect this last vote that we had. You know, it basically was a vote to undo everything that we worked so hard on all day. It basically was a backdoor way of killing the transportation bill, a bill that is fiscally responsible. It's at current levels plus inflation, fully paid for. Senator Inhofe and I agreed at the outset in the EPW committee that we would only support a bill that was fully paid for. I was very honored that we got so many Republican votes on that. I'm looking forward to next week when we get this done. I understand the senator from Michigan has something he wants to get accomplished by voice vote, and I'd ask unanimous consent that he be able to explain that so that we can continue making progress, and then he would yield the floor to the Republican side.
Without objection. Senator from Michigan.
Mr. President, the next item on the unanimous consent agreement is my amendment number 1818. It's my understanding now that this amendment can be adopted by a voice vote that has been cleared for that. I will, and I ask consent to set aside the pending amendment to call up that amendment number 1818.
The clerk will report.
The senator from Michigan, Mr. Levin, for himself and Mr. Conrad, proposes an amendment numbered 1818.
Mr. President, well, let me see if there's anyone who else. It's been on the list for unanimous consent, so I'll just let the chair rule on this, see if anyone else has something else. If not, I want to speak for a few minutes afterwards.
Without objection. Was there further debate on the motion? On the amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion passes.
Mr. President, I ask
amendment is agreed to.
That I ask that the motion to reconsider be laid on the table.
Motion to reconsider.
Be laid on the table. Now, Mr. President, I would ask just for 3 minutes here to very, very briefly explain, and I'll put the rest of my statement in the record.
Without objection.
Mr. President, under the Patriot Act, Congress gave the Treasury the power to take a range of measures against foreign financial institutions or jurisdictions that it finds to be of, quote, primary money laundering concern. Now, the Levin-Conrad amendment, which we just adopted, would authorize the Treasury to impose the same types of measures on the same types of entities if Treasury finds them to be impeding U.S. tax enforcement. This amendment has been the subject of a bill for a number of years, and it comes out of hearings of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, which I chair. And those investigations show that each year the United States loses literally tens of billions of dollars in tax revenue from people using offshore tax havens to dodge their U.S. tax obligations, including through hidden accounts at tax haven banks. We issued a lengthy bipartisan support. At our subcommittee, we detailed case histories involving tax haven banks that helped thousands of U.S. clients dodge their U.S. taxes, banks that used a long list of secrecy tricks to make it nearly impossible for U.S. tax authorities to trace funds sent to them offshore. Mr. President, I would ask that the balance of my statement be inserted in the record in full.
Without objection.
And Mr. President, I just want to thank Senator Conrad, Senator Whitehouse, and many others who have been co-sponsoring this amendment, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Mr. President, yield additional 5 minutes. There's another unanimous consent.
Senator from Michigan.
I would ask unanimous consent that the Merkley Amendment relative to farm vehicles listed in the previous order be changed from number 1653 to number 1814.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona.
Call my amendment 1669, which is at the desk and has to be reported by number.
Without objection, the clerk will report.
I ask for the reading.
The senator from Arizona, Mr. McCain, for himself and others, proposes an amendment numbered 1669 as modified.
Mr. President,
Senator from Tennessee.
I'd like to ask unanimous consent that amendment number 1785 and 1810 be made pending in block.
Is there objection? Without objection, the clerk will report by number.
The senator from Tennessee, Mr. Corker, proposes amendments in block numbered 1785 and 1810.
Mr. President,
Senator from Ohio.
I ask unanimous consent that the pending amendment be set aside and call up amendment numbers 1736 and 1742 and ask they be considered in block.
Without objection, clerk will report the amendments by numbers. Are they going to read it?
The senator from Ohio, Mr. Portman, proposes amendments numbered 1730.
President, I ask unanimous consent that the reading of the amendments be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I encourage my colleagues to support these amendments. The first one gives the states the freedom to keep their gas taxes. For decades, Washington has collected state gas taxes through its highway program, taken its cut off the top, and then attached burdensome mandates and other requirements to the funds before sending them back to the states. And it hasn't worked. Since 2008, the Highway Trust Fund's been bailed out 3 times from the Treasury's general fund to the tune of about $35 billion. And during that time, the federal government has required that 10% of all surface transportation funds be spent on enhancements, so-called, which includes archaeological planning and research, transportation museums, scenic beautification along highways, and so on. The Government Accounting Office has found that between 2004 and 2008, at a time when our bridges and roads have been in disrepair and have needed all the help they could get, the Highway Trust Fund spent $78 billion on projects not related to the support of our nation's networks of highways and bridges. With the economy still struggling, we need to provide states with the ability to move quickly and to innovatively implement their transportation priorities instead of a one-size-fits-all solution from Washington. Ohio's gas taxes shouldn't be watered down, shouldn't be wasted by costly federal mandates, regulations, and bureaucracies that Ohio doesn't think are necessary. Rather, states should have the freedom to use the revenue collected from highway users within their own state in the way that they see fit to get more money into infrastructure. This amendment will give the states the freedom they need to do that while ensuring that states maintain the current interstate highway system in accordance with current standards. We need to pass this amendment today so states can get back on track. Let me give you a good example I heard about over the weekend, Mr. President. This comes from Jeff Linkus, who's the Clinton County, Ohio engineer, and it's an example of how federal government sometimes gets in the way and escalates the costs of projects. There's a local stream called Todd's Fork, which is crossed by 2 roads, Prairie Road and Starbuck Road. For each of these roads, Clinton County has built a bridge over this same local creek, Todd's Fork. The same firm designed both bridges. The bridges are the same length, but there's one major difference. The bridge for Prairie Road was built using federal money, while the bridge for Starbuck Road was using Ohio funds. According to Jeff Linkus, the federally funded bridge costs about 20% more than the state-funded bridge. And I hear this all over the state, as I'm sure my colleagues do as well. It took more time from design to bid, so it was more expensive, and it took more time, was more costly in both respects. The federal project costs more in a lot of areas, including the federal bureaucracy, more environmental studies, more historical and archaeological studies, more right-of-way expenses, more design and review costs. The stakes have never been higher. The federal government cannot continue its current course of wasting our state's gas taxes. Since the last transportation authorization bill, called Safety Lou, back in 2005, the outlays have exceeded the revenues from the gas tax every single year. We've got to get back on a fiscally sustainable path, eliminate the waste, allow states that flexibility to maintain roads, bridges, and highways. This amendment would do just that. It's an opt-out. It's not a mandate. States could choose to opt out or not. The second amendment, Mr. President, S. 1813, also is a fiscally responsible amendment that helps the taxpayer. It lifts an antiquated one-size-fits-all government mandate that dates back to 1956 and would allow states the freedom to make their own decisions on how to manage their rest areas, which the federal government forces states to pay to maintain and improve. The current approach has set up a patchwork of exemptions, exceptions, and special permits that allows some states to commercialize rest areas while prohibiting other states from doing the same. Under this amendment, states would have the freedom to commercialize interstate and non-interstate rest areas as long as they don't impair the highway or interfere with the full use and safety of the highway. At a time when America's core transportation infrastructure, our highway, roads, and bridges need all the help they can get, the Ohio Department of Transportation spends an estimated $50 million a year on rest area upkeep in Ohio alone. The high cost of maintaining and improving these rest areas is handcuffing the ability of Ohio and other states to spend more money on core infrastructure, roads, and bridges. This is a fiscally conservative, pro-taxpayer amendment that would help states like Ohio recover some of these losses, possibly break even, or maybe even add some revenue by allowing restaurants, gas stations, convenience stores, or other entities to lease spaces at rest areas. It's a common-sense approach that's supported by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials and by a lot of the private sector as well. This amendment is a way to give core infrastructure projects more funding while enacting a proposal that actually helps the states to be able to make the decision. In Ohio alone, if you take ODOT's $50 million a year cost for rest areas and calculate it over the course of the next 20 years, that's $1 billion that could go into highway infrastructure. This amendment does not direct or mandate states to commercialize rest areas or to commercialize in any specific way. It leaves that up to the states. All it does is give the states the flexibility they want to be able to make their own decisions on how to best use those rest areas. I urge my colleagues to join me in voting to lift this burdensome federal mandate and to give states the freedom to develop their own underused and expensive rest areas. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Indiana.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to set aside the pending amendment and call up amendment number 1779 on behalf of Senator Alexander and amendments 1589 and 1756 on behalf of Senator DeMint en bloc.
Without objection, the clerk will report the amendments.
The senator from Indiana, Mr. Coates, for Mr. Alexander, proposes amendment number 1779. And for Mr. DeMint, proposes in blocks amendments 1589 and 1756.
Mr. President.
Senator from Indiana.
Mr. President, I now call up my amendment number 1517, which is at the desk, and I ask you that it be reported by number.
Without objection, the clerk will report.
The senator from Indiana, Mr. Coates, proposes an amendment number 1517.
Mr. President, this amendment 1517 is major significance to my home state of Indiana as well as to a majority of the states across this country. Most people are familiar with the fact that when they pull up the gas pump, they are not only paying for the cost of gas, they are paying the tax on the cost of that gas. And the federal tax on that gasoline pumped into the tank is then sent to Washington and put into a so-called federal gas tax fund, trust. The word trust is really somewhat of a misnomer because, like so many trusts that we create, it doesn't live up to its name. Trust means that it's safeguarded. No one else can touch it. No one else can use it. And the trust fund was designed to collect taxes from the sale of gasoline at the federal level, and then under a provision return that tax back to the state. Bottom line is that the majority of our states in this country are not getting back what they put in. And so this amendment is designed to correct that flaw, or at least that current provision in terms of the way that trust fund is operated. Now, my colleague from Ohio, Senator Portman, just announced an amendment that I think makes a great deal of sense, and I intend to support that. And this is somewhat of a similar amendment, except that what this requires is that whatever a state puts in to the trust fund, it receives at least an equal amount back. My state, like many states across the nation, draws the short end of the stick in terms of getting our money back. And it turns the trust fund into a distribution fund based upon the outdated formula and continuation of the broken earmarking process. And let me explain that. I've said that citizens expect that when they fill up their car and pay their federal tax, they'll see it coming back. But in reality, many states, as I've said, receive less than they put in. Interesting part of all this is that there is a formula created by which an average of the amount of money spent by states is calculated, and states are rewarded on the basis, and the money is distributed on the basis of how that historical average is calculated. So states that have had very efficient members of Congress creating earmarks and pouring more money into their state by earmarking end up with a higher historical average. And as a result, those states benefit now from the distribution from the trust fund to a greater degree. In fact, they're called the donee states, because they receive more than what is put in from the donor states. And so those states that have taken more responsible fiscal measures in terms of how they spend their money and how they spend the taxpayers' dollars, like the state of Indiana, end up being shortchanged simply because we have been more prudent in terms of how we spend our money. We haven't poured in the earmarks, which raise our historical average, and as a consequence, we end up being a donor state. More money going out than is coming back in. Now, the Senate has recently passed legislation to end the practice of earmarking, and I think that's a very positive step forward. But here we now have a federal program that, in a sense, is calculated and based on past earmarking. So if we're really serious about eliminating earmarking, we're also going to need to fix the formulas used in current programs to end that practice in terms of rewarding states more money than they deserve. This amendment fixes this inequity and restores the trust fund to its original intent, to give taxpayers money back to them in the amount that they deposited. Under my amendment, each state will get back what it puts in out of the total available funds. It's a fairness issue and a means by which we can restore the confidence of the American people that a trust fund is truly a trust fund. This amendment will send a message that Congress is truly serious about managing culture change in Washington. The American people have rejected earmarking, and it would be irresponsible for this institution to reward that practice under this highway bill. And so I urge my colleagues to support this important amendment. It takes a stand for fairness and fiscal integrity. It will be brought up on Tuesday. I'm not sure exactly where I am in the queue, but I urge my colleagues to take a look at this and support this, both from a standpoint of fairness, which gives back every state and every taxpayer the money they put into the trust fund on a fair basis and on an equal basis in terms of money in and money out, as well as ends a practice, continues the process of ending the practice of earmarks, which benefits some states and not those that have been fiscally prudent. Mr. President, with that, I yield the floor.
Senator from Missouri.
I'd like to call up my amendment number 1540, which is at the desk, and ask that it be reported by number. It's amendment 1540.
Without objection, the clerk will report the amendment by number.
The senator from Missouri, Mr. Blunt, for himself, and Mr. Casey proposes an amendment number 1540.
I think the Clerk, for reporting. This amendment deals with the whole issue of off-system bridges. These are bridges that aren't part of the state system, aren't part of the federal system, but normally are run by county governments. In our state, like most of the states near or east of the Mississippi River, we have lots of counties. We have 115. They have large numbers of bridges, and for a number of years now have benefited from 15% of the bridge funds that go to states. I think most of us